Greetings and welcome to Connect and Thrive, Volunteering NT's initiative to help enrich lives and connect communities. It is produced for volunteer-involving organisations in the NT, but we're hoping that groups Australia-wide will benefit as we explore and troubleshoot the issues that such organisations commonly face. Having difficult conversations is one area that many people dread. In this episode, Volunteering NT's very own Mita explains a three-step process which can make it much easier to avoid avoidance and increase the likelihood of achieving a positive outcome. Enjoy.
Let's talk about how to manage difficult conversations with volunteers. Most volunteer managers have faced it, that moment when something goes wrong. Maybe a volunteer misses a shift, or a misunderstanding turns into tension, or worse still, a code of conduct gets breached. You know you have to talk about it, but it kind of feels awkward. Unfortunately, avoiding the conversation doesn't make the problem go away. It usually just makes things bigger. Difficult conversations don't have to be disastrous. Sometimes they can actually strengthen trust. And sometimes they help you make the tough call when a volunteer just isn't right. Most conflict comes from a misunderstanding. Maybe instructions weren't clear. Maybe cultural differences or communication styles clashed. Or maybe assumptions got made on both sides. Here's a three-step process to make that awkward talk a little bit easier. So let's use this scenario. You have a stall at an expo and you've asked a volunteer, someone with English as a second language, to help you out. And you've asked them to be proactive and engage with the public. But you see that they're on their phone. This isn't the first time that they've done this. You feel that they're not really very engaged in anything you've asked them to do, and they seem more interested in their phone. So let's use the three-step process. Step 1, prepare. So before you even have the conversation, get clear in your own mind what you want to achieve from the conversation. For example, in this case, perhaps you just want them to undertake the task according to your expectations. Make sure you gather facts, not assumptions. Facts are what you can actually see. So you can see that they're on their phone. You can't assume that they're on social media. Maybe they're using a translation app to understand what people are saying. Maybe anticipate possible reactions and think about how you'll respond calmly. Are they likely to get defensive or angry or cry or leave? Make sure you choose the right time and place. Definitely not in front of others. Going for a walk is actually a good idea because you are usually on neutral ground and being side by side is easier than looking at each other. Step 2, listen actively with curiosity and respect. So avoid blame or judgment and use I statements rather than you statements. So instead of saying, "You're always on your phone," try, "I've noticed that you're on your phone when you could be talking to people. I'd like to understand what's going on." Listen to them respectfully and reflect what they've said back to them so that you make sure that you've understood. For example, "So what I'm hearing is that you're avoiding talking to people because you're worried your English isn't good enough and you'll make mistakes." Step 3, agree on next steps. So summarize what you've understood, what you're agreeing, make sure that you've clarified any differences, then move on to the next steps. And you can use phrases like, "Let's focus on solutions rather than blame," or "What would help you move forward from here?" Be clear about responsibilities, who will do what and by when, and then check that they've understood. Does this plan work for you? Can I check that I've explained that clearly? Now, sometimes, despite your best efforts, a volunteer continues to breach the code of conduct. So, of course, you actually need to ensure that you have a code of conduct and that the volunteer has read, understood, and signed it. And if that's the case, it's absolutely okay to ask a volunteer to leave. Obviously, we don't want them to leave for many reasons. Volunteers are part of the team, and just like staff, they do need to meet the agreed standards of behaviour. And it might be a risk mitigation for your organisation. Keeping them on may actually be a risk. So ending someone's involvement isn't failure, it's protecting your organisation, your mission, and your reputation, and possibly other volunteers. This reflects the National Standard for Volunteer Involvement, Standard 5. Volunteers are supported and developed, and supporting volunteers means giving them clarity, feedback, and fair chances to improve. But it also means protecting the health of the team by stepping in firmly when expectations aren't met. So, difficult conversations aren't about conflict, they're about clarity, respect, and boundaries. When misunderstandings arise, just slow down and listen. Use clear language, and if a volunteer continues to breach the code of conduct, know that it's okay to part ways. Because when you manage conversations with courage and care, you protect your team and you give your volunteers the best chance to grow.
Thanks, Mita. I could definitely relate to the example issue in this episode. I realised I have often assumed what is happening rather than rely on facts. The 3-step process is useful, and the example phrases really helped bring it all together for me. I will definitely be trying these suggestions during my next challenging conversation. I will also return to the National Volunteer Standards and dust off our Code of Conduct to see if it's fit for purpose. In episode 8, we'll be looking at different ways to recognise our volunteers for their contributions. Did you know that recognition of volunteers has its own International Day? For more information and to connect with Volunteering NT, check out our Facebook page. Contact details are in the About tab. We also have a presence on Instagram and LinkedIn. If you'd like to learn more about the national standards for volunteer involvement and to explore other useful tools and resources, make yourself a cup of tea and Google National Knowledge Base for Volunteer Management. From all of us here at Volunteering NT, we'd like to say thanks for listening and we look forward to your continued support.